Okay, I'm gonna show you an object, and you're gonna tell me what you think of it. It'll be like an ink blot test. Don't worry, it's gone now. It can't hurt you. SpongeBob SquarePants is a character that needs no introduction at this point. His face has been slapped onto nearly anything known to man, and that includes video games. Looking at SpongeBob's video game history, you'll quickly realize that the majority of them were released during the 2000s, almost all of which were published by THQ, the kings of the licensed video game. They own the video game rights to the IPs of so many different companies, it's absolutely ridiculous. Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, Marvel, Lucasfilm, Nickelodeon. If there was a movie or TV show that was even a modest success, there was a 99% chance it had a video game that was published by this company. They had a monopoly on this stuff. Sure, them focusing so much on licensed games meant that they didn't have the best reputation, but they brought in the money, and that made them a very big publisher in the gaming space. It seemed THQ would be around for the long run. But by 2012, they'd gone bankrupt and were forced to sell all of their assets before shutting down. THQ was no more, and the video game rights for SpongeBob and the rest of Nick needed a new home, which they were able to find with Activision, a well-known and respected game publisher that everyone loves and has totally not done anything wrong ever. Dropping the sarcasm, I know Activision Blizzard is not well liked. They're up there with Ubisoft as the poster child of greedy, awful AAA game companies. But to be fair, this was back in the early 2010s, when they still had a decent amount of goodwill left to their name. And since Activision, unlike THQ, was a big AAA publisher, it meant that they would have the resources to make some truly great games with the SpongeBob license. They made only 2 and are considered some of the worst SpongeBob games ever made. SpongeBob SquarePants, Plankton's Robotic Revenge, which in true licensed kids game fashion, released in late 2013 on every device capable of playing a video game, and SpongeBob HeroPants, a tie-in game for the second SpongeBob movie, released in 2015 for the Xbox 360, Nintendo DS, and there was a third console, I just can't remember the name of it. As I said a moment ago, a lot of SpongeBob fans do not like these games, citing them as some of, if not the worst, with the IP attached to it. Oh man, things were so much better with THQ. Bad example. Bad example. Okay, we're moving on. After hearing about how bad these games apparently were for years on end, I finally decided to play them out of pure curiosity. There have been plenty of movies and games I've watched or played for this channel that most people told me were bad, or I thought would be bad going in, only to end up really enjoying them. It's even happened to me with some of the SpongeBob games. So I'm gonna go into this video with an open mind, and not let popular opinion influence how I end up feeling about these games. So, without further ado, here is the Activision SpongeBob duology, starting with
Good snail.
Plankton's Robotic Revenge, if the name didn't give it away, is about Plankton forming yet another scheme to get the Krabby Patty secret formula, using the most powerful weapon known to man, Duracell batteries. A cargo ship heading over Bikini Bottom accidentally drops a shipping container holding some common household batteries, which just so happens to land right in front of the chum bucket. Realizing their power, Plankton uses them as a power source for his new robot army and storms the Krusty Krab, where he finally takes Mr. Krabs' safe with the formula. However, the safe requires 3 keys scattered across the ocean in order to be unlocked, which Plankton also takes the map for. With no other way to keep his beloved formula from Plankton, Mr. Krabs enlists the help of SpongeBob and the rest of the gang to travel with him across the ocean and put a stop to Plankton's revenge. His robotic revenge.
Baba Booey.
The gameplay of Plankton's Robotic Revenge is a lot different compared to previous SpongeBob games. which were mainly platformers or minigame collections. Instead, it's the typical 3D beat-em-up with multiplayer co-op that dominated this era of kids' games. There's some light platforming and puzzle solving, along with these weird sections where SpongeBob goes inside of a sea tornado and has to avoid debris. But for the most part, you're going from level to level, destroying Plankton's robots. Doing so will cause them to drop a bunch of nuts and bolts that can be used by the player to upgrade their weapons, or as the game calls them, gizmos. They start out with a basic combo and ground pound, but are able to unlock and upgrade various gizmos, most of which use food as ammo, because Nick just wouldn't approve SpongeBob with a Glock. There's one that launches pickles, one that fires ketchup and mustard at the same time, one that shoots tartar sauce, the list goes on. I mainly found myself using the default pickle launcher for most of the game, but as it started to get more difficult towards the end, I started using the tartar sauce gizmo more often. And when I mean difficult, I don't mean that the game's super hard to finish. It's a kid's beat 'em up, it's pretty damn easy. But unlike some of the other games in this genre, for this audience, the game isn't completely mindless and button mashy like you'd think. There's actually some level of strategy and challenge to the gameplay. I can see this being legitimately challenging for its target audience. It can definitely feel like they keep copy-pasting a bunch of the robots sometimes, but the combat is actually pretty fun, and collecting the machine parts from Plankton's fallen robots is super satisfying. After completing enough levels, the player will encounter one of 4 bosses in a mech. The first is against Plankton, and is basically a tutorial boss that teaches you how these mech fights work. The next 2 are against some of Plankton's cousins, and the third is another against Plankton that also serves as the final boss. All 3 holding one of the keys required to unlock Mr. Krabs' safe. Like the rest of the game, these bosses are pretty easy, but still not completely mindless. And although they all look similar and share certain attack patterns, it's not just lazily reusing assets either. These attacks get harder to avoid with each encounter, and have new moves thrown in to keep the player on their toes. After taking care of Plankton's second mech, his robotic revenge is successfully foiled, and Mr. Krabs has all the keys to his safe back. He opens the safe only for it to contain a note telling him it was in his back pocket the whole time. Insert 2 nickels joke here. SpongeBob and friends celebrate their victory, and Patrick uses the batteries from Plankton's army to give himself a better cable reception. Ending SpongeBob SquarePants, Plankton's Robotic Revenge. I really don't get the hate for this game. Sure, it's not amazing, but for what it was trying to be, a simple kids co-op beat 'em up with a SpongeBob license, I think it did a pretty good job. It's pretty fun. The graphics are good, not something you'd expect from a AAA company, but they are a step up from the games THQ were making before they lost the SpongeBob license, which looked like upscaled PS2 games. Because they were. And I also enjoyed the writing of this game as well. It had some pretty good jokes. Nothing that made me laugh out loud, but it's still leagues above what the show was doing at the time. Overall, Plankton's Robotic Revenge is a pretty solid 7 out of 10. If you're a fan of SpongeBob, I'd recommend checking this game out. Preferably with a friend so you can play in co-op, since it was designed around it and I feel like you'd get more enjoyment from the game that way compared to playing it alone like I did. And due to the game's age, turning 12 in October of this year, I can see people my age getting nostalgic over Plankton's Robotic Revenge, and looking back at it fondly. It's kinda scary that 2010s media can be viewed in that way now. So far, Activision's off to a pretty good start with the SpongeBob IP, and this game's developer, Behavior Interactive, has a winning formula on their hands. Let's see if they can expand upon it with their next SpongeBob game. Calm down, it is just a game. Just like how Sponge Out of Water was a very different film compared to the first SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob HeroPants is a very different movie tie-in game than the first SpongeBob movie tie-in game. It takes place after the events of the movie it's based on, unlike the first SpongeBob movie game, which tried to adapt the events of the film with some creative liberties taken. And also unlike the first SpongeBob movie game, SpongeBob HeroPants isn't good. Yeah, I'm not going to beat around the bush here, this game is terrible. It begins with SpongeBob taking his usual walk to work, only to get there and find something unusual. The Krabby Patties and spatulas are alive now. Ain't that wacky? Bubbles the dolphin then appears and explains that the strange occurrences are due to the last remaining pages of Burger Beard's book from the movie, and enlists the help of the playable characters from the last game and Plankton to find them, so they can return everything back to normal. He gets out a duplicate page and uses it to give SpongeBob and the gang the ability to transform back into their superhero forms. And then they're off to save the day. Starting the first level, and yikes. I know the last game didn't exactly have groundbreaking visuals, but this looks really bad for the 360. I don't even want to know what it looks like on 3DS and the other console I can't remember the name of. The graphics just immediately give off the vibe that this is going to be low-effort shovelware. So, what exactly sets HeroPants apart from the last game? You know, besides it not being good. Well, to start, Plankton joins the roster of playable characters. But I played as SpongeBob the whole way through, so I have no footage to show for it. The game's also a lot more focused on platforming and puzzle solving in addition to combat. I'd say it's a 50-50 balance between the two in this game, compared to the 2080 of the last. The combat itself has also been overhauled. The player still has a basic combo and ground pound, but the gizmos from Plankton's Robotic Revenge are completely gone and have been replaced with launching nasty patties at enemies. Yeah, that's a good replacement. Defeating an enemy will cause them to drop these generic silver and gold coins that the player can also find by jumping around the level and function just like the robot parts in the last game. Although since the gizmos aren't around anymore, they're used for things like increasing health, attack damage, and the duration of your superhero form, which you unlock by filling up this bar in the top right and is basically just a better version of the character you're playing as. You get a faster running speed and a higher, floatier jump. A bit basic for the main mechanic you're basing your game around, but it's better than the super state you could enter in Plankton's Robotic Revenge, where you just became invincible for 15 seconds with no upgrade to your attacks or anything. The final thing HeroPants does differently is having pages of Burger Beard's book scattered across the levels as optional collectibles that can be used to unlock the game's true ending. That's right, this game has multiple endings. But if my attitude towards HeroPants hasn't given it away, I didn't even try to go after these. I feel like I should be going more in-depth about my thoughts here, that I shouldn't just explain how the game works before saying a joke about how bad it is. But I don't really think I need to. The gameplay you're looking at speaks for itself. The platforming is slow and boring, the combat has zero depth, every enemy goes down in 1 or 2 hits, and the boss fights aren't even boss fights. There's 3 in the whole game. The first you can just spam the Y button to win, the second one has you run away from them so it's not even a fight, and the third is just a normal level where you occasionally attack a sleeping SpongeBob. The cutscenes are also a major downgrade from the last game as well. The opening and ending look fine, just as good as the ones in Plankton's Robotic Revenge, even if they look really compressed compared to the ones in that game, but anything outside of those two, not so much. It's just the characters standing around talking, but the camera is always facing behind the characters, so that way they don't have to spend any extra money animating facial expressions or lip sync. It's so lazy. Overall, SpongeBob HeroPants is not a good game. Like, at all. I know I've said that a million times at this point, but I can't say it enough. The voice actors give good performances, and those opening and ending cutscenes look nice, but outside of those two things, it does nothing well, and is a game I don't see anybody enjoying. not the average Joe, gamers, SpongeBob fans, kids, or even fans of bad games. Because it's not entertainingly bad, it's just boring and doesn't do anything particularly well. 2 out of 10. It is easily what Plankton's Robotic Revenge could have been if the developers didn't care. Which I don't understand, because this was made by the same people, or at least a division of them. I don't know what went wrong here, but I'm gonna try and find out. There's pretty much zero development information online about these two games, outside of the fact that Plankton's Robotic Revenge had the working title of SpongeBob 5D for some reason. But with the way HeroPants looks, plays, sounds, I wouldn't be shocked to learn that it began development on 3DS, and was sloppily ported to Xbox 360 and the other console to get more sales. Activision probably gave Behavior a ridiculously low budget compared to Plankton's Robotic Revenge, and they made the best game they probably could have within those limitations. Just a theory, a game development theory, but I wouldn't be surprised if something similar to what I described happened behind the scenes. Which is a shame, because it's been shown that they could have made a decent game with a higher budget and more time. Okay, the game is gone now. You happy? And that's the end of the Activision SpongeBob duology. After HeroPants, Activision would only publish one more Nickelodeon game in 2016. That being a Ninja Turtles hack and slash developed by Platinum Games, before delisting all of their Nick games from digital storefronts throughout 2017 and 2018, and giving them the license back. Later that same year, Nick signed a brand new deal with THQ Nordic, the successor company to THQ, and the rest is history. It really does suck that Activision, a company with decades worth of beloved titles and an infinite amount of resources, wasn't able to publish a SpongeBob game that was anything above a 7 out of 10, but them losing the license was only for the best, since not only did we get an amazing remake and sequel to Battle for Bikini Bottom from THQ Nordic, and a threequel which was just announced as I was making this video, but we also got a Patrick spin-off from Outright Games, which despite that publisher's very negative reputation, I've actually heard is a pretty solid game. And even if these two games aren't exactly spectacular, one of them is straight up terrible, I'll always have a little appreciation towards them. There was effort put into these games, even if they didn't always translate to a high quality product. And they also helped show that, even if the games THQ made with the SpongeBob license weren't the greatest, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. Alright, your test results came back in. We analyzed your reaction to both of these box arts right here, and we have come to the conclusion that you're afraid of buff people.